The battlefield had gone quiet, but it was not peaceful. Smoke rose in thin black lines from broken machines. Pieces of armor and weapons were scattered across cracked stone. Small fires burned where plasma rounds had struck. The war had stopped only an hour ago. A ceasefire had been declared, but the ground still felt like it remembered the fighting. Sergeant Elias Ward moved slowly through the wreckage, rifle lowered but ready. His helmet visor flickered with damage reports. Human casualties were marked in blue. Alien bodies were marked in red. That was when his comm unit crackled. Sergeant Ward, evac shuttle inbound. 2 minutes. Prioritize human wounded only. Elias exhaled slowly. Copy. He stepped over a fallen drone and turned toward a collapsed transport vehicle. Something shifted under the metal. A hand. Not human. Large. Gray. Clawed. Elias pushed the metal aside and froze. Commander Kaler of the Virelian Coalition lay trapped under twisted plating. His armor was shattered across the back. A dark burn cut across his spine. His lower body was still, but his eyes were open, bright gold, alive. They locked onto Elias. For a long second, neither moved. Kaler had led the charge against Elias's unit that morning. He had broken through human lines like a storm. Elias had seen him lift a soldier with one arm and throw him across a barricade. Now, he could not even lift his own head. The comm crackled again. Ward, status. Elias swallowed. I found one more. Human? He hesitated. No. Silence. Then the answer came, cold and clear. Leave him. He's paralyzed. He's dead weight. The coalition retreated. He's their problem. Elias looked down again. Kaler's chest rose slowly with painful breaths. His translator device was cracked, but it sparked weakly. In broken English, the alien whispered, Go, human. It was not an order. It was not anger. It sounded like shame. Behind Elias, in the distance, the evacuation shuttle roared closer. He could hear its engines cutting through the smoky air. His visor flashed a warning. Unidentified drone signatures reappearing on radar. Enemy cleanup drones. They would sterilize the battlefield. Anything still alive would not stay that way for long. War, move, command barked. We don't have space for alien casualties. Elias stared at the alien commander's armor. Symbols of rank were carved into the metal. Hours ago, that armor had terrified his squad. Now it was cracked and useless. Kaler's golden eyes shifted slightly. Not with hate, with fear. Elias had seen that look before. On young soldiers. On civilians caught in crossfire. On men who knew they were about to be left behind. The alien forces had already retreated. They had left their commander under scrap metal like broken equipment. Because he could not stand. Because he could not fight. Because he was no longer useful. The comm hissed again. Sergeant Ward, this is a direct order. Prioritize human lives only. Elias reached up slowly. He switched off his comm. The world went silent except for the distant hum of engines and the crackle of fire. Kaler's eyes widened slightly. You risk punishment, the alien said weakly. Elias knelt beside him. Maybe. He scanned the injury again. The plasma strike had burned deep into the spine. There was no movement below the waist. The damage was severe, permanent most likely. The shuttle's shadow passed overhead. Elias looked at the sky. 2 minutes, maybe less. The radar warning blinked again. Drones were close. Kaler tried to shift and failed. Pain flashed across his face. Leave me, he whispered. Warriors do not beg. Elias slid his rifle across his back and began pulling metal debris away from the alien's body. You fought like hell, Elias said simply. Kaler's breathing grew heavier. I fought to kill you. Yeah, Elias replied. You did. More debris fell aside. Elias got his arms under Kaler's shoulders and lifted slightly. The alien gasped in pain, but did not cry out. The shuttle ramp lowered in the distance. Through the smoke, Elias saw one of his squad waving frantically. Ward, move. The radar alarm turned red. Drones were second away. Kaler's voice was barely a sound. Why? Elias tightened his grip and lifted the alien fully onto his back. The weight nearly drove him to his knees. Kayla was larger, heavier, armored, but Elias adjusted his stance. "You don't leave soldiers behind," he said through clenched teeth. The alien's claws gripped weakly onto Elias's shoulder armor. "You are foolish." "Maybe." The first drone appeared over the ridge, sleek and fast, scanning the field. Elias began to run. Each step felt heavy. Smoke burned his lungs. His armor servos strained under the extra weight. Blaster fire hit the ground behind him. The shuttle engines roared louder. The ramp was still down. "Move, Ward," someone shouted. Another drone swooped lower, targeting. Elias pushed harder. He did not look back. He did not slow down. The ramp loomed ahead. Hands reached out from inside the shuttle. Blaster fire struck near his feet. A shock wave threw him forward. He stumbled, but did not fall. With one final step, he crossed onto the ramp. The shuttle doors slammed shut behind them. Outside, drones opened fire against reinforced hull plating. Inside, silence fell. Human medics stared. At the alien, at Elias. No one spoke for several seconds. Kaler's golden eyes moved slowly across the human faces. Confused, alive, Elias lowered him carefully onto the medical stretcher. One of the medics whispered, "That's the enemy commander." Elias removed his helmet. His face was streaked with soot. "Not anymore," he said quietly. The shuttle lifted off. Through the small viewport, the battlefield grew distant. Below, enemy drones burned everything that remained. Everything except one thing. A choice. And that choice was now flying home with humanity. The first drone appeared like a shadow against the smoke. Its metal body cut through the sky without sound. A red scanning beam swept across the battlefield. Anything that moved was marked for destruction. Sergeant Elias Ward tightened his grip on Commander Kaler and ran. The alien's weight dragged against his shoulders. Kaler's armor was cracked and heavy. Each step felt slower than the last. Around them, broken machines burned. Small explosions burst from damaged weapons. The air smelled of metal and ash. Behind them, the first drone fired. A blast of plasma struck the ground, sending hot stone into the air. Shards of debris cut across Elias's side. Pain shot through his ribs, but he did not stop. More drones appeared over the ridge. They had returned to erase the battlefield, to erase survivors. Kaler's translator sparked weakly against his chest. The device was broken, but few words forced their way through. "Human, stop." Elias kept moving. "You will be killed." Another blast hit close. The shock wave knocked Elias forward to one knee. Kaler slipped slightly, but Elias pulled him back into place. "You dishonor your kind," Kaler said through static. "And mine." Elias pushed himself up again. "Maybe." Through smoke and falling ash, the human shuttle hovered in the distance. Its ramp was lowering. "Leave me," Kaler said. His voice was weaker now. "A paralyzed warrior has no place in battle. My people understand this." Elias stepped over a fallen barricade. "You fought like a warrior," he said calmly. "That's enough." A drone swooped lower, its weapons charged with a sharp, rising whine. Elias turned his body, shielding Kaler with his back. The blast hit behind them. Metal fragments exploded outward. Something sharp tore through Elias's shoulder armor. Pain burned down his arm. He almost fell. Almost. Kaler felt the impact through Elias's body. For the first time since the fighting stopped, fear tightened in the alien's chest. "Why?" Kaler demanded. "I tried to kill you." Elias did not look back. That was the war. He ran harder. The shuttle engines roared above the noise of battle. Human soldiers stood at the ramp, waving urgently. "Ward, move!" Another drone locked onto them, its targeting beam fixed on Elias's back. He saw the warning flash across his visor. There was no cover. He shifted Kaler higher and turned again, putting his body between the alien and the incoming fire. The blast struck close enough to throw them both forward. Elias hit the ground hard. His vision blurred. For a second, everything went quiet. Kaler lay half on top of him. The alien could not move his legs, but he could see the sky. More drones approached. The shuttle engines grew louder, then softer. It was pulling away. Negative, someone shouted over distant comms. He's not going to make it. The shuttle began to rise. Kaler's golden eyes closed briefly. This is how it ends, he thought. Left behind by both sides. Elias forced himself up again. Blood ran down his arm inside his armor. His shoulder screamed in pain. But he lifted Kaler once more. Step by step. Slow. Unsteady. The shuttle climbed higher. Inside the cockpit, the pilot hesitated. A medic near the ramp shook his head. We can't waste space on the alien. We have injured humans on board. The pilot looked through the forward screen. He saw Elias, still moving, still carrying the enemy commander. The drones were seconds away. The pilot made a choice. Lower the ramp, he ordered. But lower it. The shuttle dipped again. The ramp dropped back down into the smoke. Elias saw it. He did not speed up. He had nothing left to give. He simply kept walking. A drone fired again. The blast struck near his feet, sending shrapnel into his leg. His knee buckled. He stumbled. Hands reached from the ramp. 2 human soldiers grabbed Elias by the arms and pulled him forward. Another grabbed Kaler's armor. Together, they dragged both of them inside. The ramp slammed shut. The shuttle lifted fast. Engines screaming as plasma bolts struck the hull. Inside, the air felt heavy and quiet. Kaler lay on the cold metal floor. He stared up at the ceiling, waiting. He had seen how prisoners were treated in other wars. He expected restraints, interrogation, chains. Instead, human medics rushed forward. Get him on a stretcher. He's losing blood. Stabilize that spinal burn. Kaler blinked in confusion. A medic knelt beside him and carefully removed pieces of broken armor. Gentle hands worked around his wounds. A scanner passed over his spine. He's paralyzed, one medic muttered. Doesn't matter, another replied. He's alive. Elias sat against the wall, breathing hard. Blood stained his sleeve. A medic tried to reach him, but he waved them toward Kaler instead. Take care of him first, Elias said. Kaler turned his head slightly. Why? He asked again, weaker now. Elias met his eyes. You were left behind, he said simply. That's not how we do things. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, leaving the burning battlefield far below. Kaler watched the humans work. No anger, no cruelty, no chains. They treated his wounds the same way they treated their own soldiers. Carefully, quickly, with purpose. For the first time in his life, the Varelian commander felt something he did not understand. Not fear, not shame, respect, and something else. Something dangerous. Hope. The story spread faster than the war had ended. Within hours, images from the battlefield were everywhere. A human soldier carrying a Varelian commander through fire. The shuttle lowering its ramp at the last second. Enemy drones firing as both disappeared into sky. On human networks, people argued. Some called Elias Ward a hero. Some called him reckless. In the Varelian coalition, the reaction was worse. Their greatest field commander had not died in battle. He had been carried away by the enemy. Alive, Sergeant Elias Ward stood at attention inside a quiet command room. His injured shoulder was wrapped in white bandage. His armor had been removed. Without it, he looked smaller. Across from him, Human High Command watched in silence. You disobeyed a direct order, the general said flatly. Yes, sir. You risked your squad. You risked the evacuation. Yes, sir. The general folded his hands. Why? Elias did not hesitate. Because he was still alive. The room stayed quiet for several seconds. You understand, the general continued, that the coalition has demanded his return. Elias said nothing. He is their decorated commander. They claim we are dishonoring their warrior caste by keeping him. He was abandoned, Elias said quietly. That does not matter to them. Outside the room, political tension grew. The Varelian High Council sent an official transmission to Earth. Their message was cold and direct. Commander Kaler must be returned immediately. Under Varelian law, a warrior who could no longer fight must choose ritual death. Keeping him alive was seen as weakness. Keeping him alive was seen as insult. Inside the human medical facility, Kaler lay still on a reinforced bed. Bright, white lights shone above him. Machines hummed softly around his body. He could not feel his legs. He had known the truth before the humans confirmed it. The spinal damage was severe, permanent. A human doctor stood beside his bed. "We've stabilized the burn," she said calmly. "But we cannot repair the nerve damage yet." Kaler stared at the ceiling. "In my culture," he said slowly, "this is the end." The doctor did not answer that. Outside his room, screens displayed live negotiations. Human and Varelian diplomats argued over words like honor, sovereignty, and tradition. They spoke about Kaler as if he were an object, an asset, a symbol. He listened to it all. He had commanded fleets. He had led charges. Now, he could not even sit up without help. The door opened quietly. Elias Ward stepped inside. He wore simple recovery clothes instead of armor. His shoulder was stiff, but he walked normally. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Elias pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "You're famous," Elias said lightly. Kaler gave a small, dry sound that might have been a laugh. "In my world, this is not fame." Elias glanced at the medical display. "They're saying it might be permanent." "It is," Kaler replied. Silence settled between them. On a nearby screen, the Varelian Council repeated their demand. Return him. Allow him to die with honor. Kaler's golden eyes shifted toward Elias. "Why?" he asked. Elias looked at him. "Why what? Why risk your life for one who tried to kill you?" The question was not angry. It was honest. Elias leaned back slightly. "Because that was the war," he said. "You were doing your job." Kaler studied him. "In my command," he said slowly, "if a soldier cannot stand, he is expected to choose death. Strength is survival." Elias shook his head. "That's not strength," he said. "That's fear." Kaler frowned slightly. "Fear of what?" "Fear of weakness." The room felt very quiet. Elias continued, calm and steady. "Where I come from, you don't leave people behind because they're broken. You help them. You fix what you can. And if you can't fix it, you stand beside them anyway." Kaler's breathing slowed. "Your people will face consequences for this," he warned. Elias nodded. "Maybe." Kaler's voice grew softer. "If I return, they will force ritual death." "We're not sending you back," Elias said. At that moment, alarms sounded faintly in the hallway. Not emergency alarms. Defense alerts. On the main display screen, a fleet signature appeared at the edge of human space. Varelian warships. Large. Armed. Official message incoming. The coalition declared that humanity was dishonoring their warrior code. If Kaler was not returned, they would reclaim him by force. Inside the room, Kaler closed his eyes briefly. "They will fight for this," he said. Elias stood slowly. "Then they'll have to fight all of us." Kaler opened his eyes again. There was no anger in Elias's face, no hatred, only quiet certainty. For the first time in his life, Kaler began to question something deeper than war. If strength meant abandoning the broken, and humanity refused to do that, then maybe strength was something else entirely. The Varelian fleet arrived without warning. Human defense stations detected them first. Dark shapes slipping out of warp at the edge of orbit. One ship, then 5, then dozens. Massive war cruisers formed a silent wall above the planet. On Earth, screens lit up across every command center. Weapon systems powered on. Shields activated. The ceasefire trembled. In the medical facility, Kaler watched the fleet's formation on a small wall display. Even from the surface, their presence felt heavy. "They came for me," he said quietly. Elias stood beside the bed, arms crossed. "Looks that way." A priority transmission opened across all channels. The Varelian High Council appeared. Tall figures in ceremonial armor, faces hard and controlled. "Return Commander Kaler immediately. The lead counselor demanded, "Your actions dishonor our warrior caste. If he remains in your custody, we will consider this an act of aggression." Behind the counselor, warships adjusted formation. On the human side, military leaders debated fast and low. "We cannot afford another war. He is their commander. If we hand him back, this ends. And if they execute him?" Silence followed that question. Inside the room, Kaler listened. His jaw tightened slightly. "Take me back," he said suddenly. Elias turned. "No." Kaler's golden eyes burned with urgency. "If I remain, they will attack. Thousands will die." "Maybe," Elias said calmly. "I am already finished," Kaler continued. "My legs do not move. My command is gone. My honor is damaged. Let me end this." Elias stepped closer to the bed. "You think going back saves lives?" "Yes." "You think they'll stop once they get you?" Kaler did not answer. Elias leaned forward slightly. "They abandoned you on that battlefield," he said quietly. "They already decided your life was over. That is our law. That's your mistake." Outside, Human Command continued arguing. "We can't fight their entire fleet. We return him, tensions drop. We keep him, war restarts." The decision hung heavy. Then Kaler made one of his own. "Open a channel," he said to the nearby technician. Elias looked at him carefully. "What are you doing?" "Ending this." Within minutes, a live broadcast signal cut across human and Varelian space. Every ship, every command center, every public network. Commander Kaler appeared on screen, lying flat on a human medical bed. The Varelian Council stiffened in shock. "Commander," one counselor said sharply, "remain silent. We will resolve this." Kaler ignored them. His voice was steady, even through pain. "I was not captured," he began. "I was left." Murmurs rippled across Varelian channels. "I was struck in the spine during the final charge," he continued. "I could not stand. My forces withdrew. I remained." The counselor's voice rose. "That is enough." "It is not enough," Kaler replied firmly. He turned his head slightly toward the camera. "A human soldier found me." Elias stood just outside the frame. "He was ordered to leave me," Kaler said. "He did not." The image of Elias carrying him through fire replayed on several screens across both factions. "He shielded me from enemy fire." Kaler continued. "He carried me while drones hunted us." He disobeyed his own command. The council's expressions darkened. "You shame yourself," one of them said. Kaler's voice did not shake. "No." He drew a slow breath. "If strength means leaving the broken behind, then humanity is stronger than we ever were." The words fell like a shockwave. Across the coalition fleet, silence spread. Young Varelian soldiers watched from barracks and bridges. They had grown up believing that weakness must be erased, that honor meant standing alone. Now their greatest commander said something different. "I was given medical care." Kaler said, "I was given dignity, not as a prisoner, not as a trophy, but as a soldier." Human medics could be seen working calmly around him. "My people would have ended my life," he continued. "These humans chose to protect it." The High Council attempted to cut the broadcast, but the signal had already spread too far. On one Varelian warship, a junior officer lowered his gaze. On another, two soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. Kaler's golden eyes stayed steady. "You call this dishonor," he said. "I call it strength." The fleet in orbit did not fire. It did not advance. It held position. Inside Human Command, the debate slowed. Elias stepped into the camera frame at last. He did not speak. He simply stood beside Kaler, not above him, beside him. The image traveled across stars. For the first time since the fleet arrived, weapon systems did not charge. They waited, and across the coalition, something small but powerful began to change. Not fear, not anger, doubt, and doubt, in an empire built on rigid strength, was more dangerous than any weapon. The fleet did not fire. For 3 long days, the Varelian warships remained in orbit. Human defenses stayed active. Weapons were locked. One mistake, could have restarted the war. But the attack never came. Inside the coalition, arguments broke out. Younger commanders questioned the old laws. Soldiers spoke quietly about Kaler's words. Some demanded reform. Some demanded silence. The High Council fractured. Half of them wanted to reclaim Kaler by force to protect tradition. The other half feared what would happen if they did. In the end, the fleet withdrew. Slowly, without ceremony. War was avoided. Barely. A final message came from the coalition leadership days later. Commander Kaler was ordered to return home to face ritual judgment. The message ended with a warning. Failure to comply would sever diplomatic ties. Kaler read the message in silence. Elias stood beside his bed again. "You going?" Elias asked. Kaler stared at the ceiling for a long moment. "If I return," he said quietly, "I will not return alive." "You don't have to go." Kaler turned his head slightly. "My people will call me coward." "Maybe," Elias said, "or maybe they'll call you the one who changed things." Kaler let out a slow breath. "I choose to stay." The decision traveled quickly across both civilizations. The coalition declared him dishonored. Humans declared him protected. But something else happened. Young Varelian officers began submitting requests to study human military ethics. Small groups began questioning the old warrior code. Debate spread across their worlds. Strength no longer meant only standing alone. Weeks passed, then months. Kaler remained paralyzed from the waist down. Human doctors continued research, but the damage was deep. He would never walk again. Still, he did not remain idle. Human leadership made him an offer, not as a prisoner, not as a trophy, as an advisor, a military ethics consultant for joint operations between humans and allied species. At first, he refused. Then he watched training simulations between human cadets and newly arrived alien volunteers. He saw how humans treated their wounded. He saw how they trained together, regardless of species. No one was discarded. No one was left behind. He accepted. Months later, a new academy opened. It was small at first, a shared program between humans and select alien recruits who believed in cooperation instead of dominance. On the day of the first joint address, a large hall filled with cadets in mixed uniforms. Human, Varelian, others who had watched the conflict closely. At the front of the room stood a raised platform. Kaler's mobility chair moved slowly into position. He wore no ceremonial armor, only a simple uniform bearing both human and Varelian insignia. Behind him stood Sergeant Elias Ward, now promoted, posture steady but relaxed. The room grew quiet. Kaler looked out at the young faces before him. Some looked proud, some uncertain, some curious. He began to speak. "My people once believed that strength meant never falling," he said. His voice was calm, deep, steady. "We believed that if a warrior could not stand, he had no value." The room remained silent. "On a battlefield not far from here," he continued, "I fell." He did not look down. They told him to leave me to die. His eyes shifted briefly toward Elias. He made a different choice. Elias did not move. He carried me through fire. He disobeyed orders. He risked his life for one who had tried to end it. Kaler let the words settle. And that choice changed two civilizations. Across the hall, human and alien cadets listened closely. "Strength," Kaler said, "is not proven by who you can destroy." He paused. "It is proven by who you choose to protect." When the address ended, the cadets stood in silence for several seconds before applause slowly filled the hall. Later that day, training began. Human and alien recruits ran drills together. They lifted one another after falls. They adjusted tactics to support slower teammates. They trained as units, not as separate species. Elias stood at the edge of the training field, arms crossed. Kaler's mobility chair rested beside him. They watched the recruits move in coordinated lines. No one was left behind. No one was abandoned. The sun lowered slowly over the academy grounds. Kaler spoke quietly. "You could have walked away." Elias gave a small shrug. "Wasn't the right thing to do." Kaler nodded once. On that battlefield, humanity didn't prove it was stronger. It proved it was better.